Hi everyone and a very warm welcome. I hope all of you are staying safe and sound. The last 2 months have been nothing short of a roller coaster ride. We have seen a spike and a decline in COVID cases. We have seen steep correction as far as cryptocurrency is concerned, and we have seen high volatility as far as the yellow metal goes. We have seen the hawkish stance of Fed and crude oil almost at a 3-year high. Commodities have been on a tear, and our own Indian benchmark has hit its all-time high. With so many variables and complexities ever before, we need a subject matter expert to decode what exactly is happening around. We have with us today Mr. Pankaj Tibriwal. Though he needs no introduction, but for the benefit of our investors, he is the Executive Vice President and Fund Manager at Kotak Mahindra Mutual Fund. He is responsible for managing three of its most performing funds in their respective categories, namely the Emerging Equity Fund, the Kotak Small Cap Fund, and the Kotak Hybrid Equity Fund. He manages assets upwards of 18,000 crores and has a rich experience of over 2 decades. Thank you, Pankaj, for joining us and taking out time to talk to our investors. I hope you, your family, and everyone at Kotak are staying safe.
Thanks, Megha, for the kind words. And it's a pleasure to be with you guys and sharing whatever we know little about markets with all of your investors.
Thank you, Pankaj. So, Pankaj, let me begin by asking you a question which has baffled almost everybody over the last couple of months, which is the difference between, how the real economy is doing versus how capital markets are behaving. We have seen a K-shaped recovery where some of the sectors have picked up really well, and some of the contact intensive sectors like hospitality, tourism, who have definitely borne the brunt of what's happening around. Some part of the market withholding can be kind of attributed to how exports have been behaving. Some part of the support has also come from robust commodity prices. Would you agree to the fact that market is primarily holding because of these reasons? And if yes, could you share some real-time examples of what is happening on the ground?
Thanks, Megha, for this question. So if you look at over the last decade or so, there is a disconnect between the actual economy and markets, and no longer the economic growth is feeding into the markets. Pre-pandemic, if you look at over the last decade or so, economy was growing at 12-13% nominal GDP. Whereas if you look at the Nifty earnings growth, and I'm taking Nifty as the barometer for the market, Nifty earnings growth was just in single digit, about 5-6%. Look at what happened last year, FY21. Economy contracted by about 7% or more, and you had one of the best earnings growth in Nifty at about 15-16%, which we have not seen for last many, many years. So clearly there are a few thoughts which probably could help you and your viewers decode this or demystify this disconnect. One, if you look at, say, Nifty as an example, the top 10 stocks in Nifty are about 60% in weightage, which doesn't mean that the 10 stock represents the economy, right? So what happens in Nifty doesn't mean what's happening in economy and vice versa. The second thing is if you look at the composition of NSE 500, and I'm taking NSE 500 because it represents roughly 85-90% of India's market cap. And you look at the Indian GDP composition. Indian GDP has 18% weightage in agriculture. But when you look at NSE 500, there's hardly a weightage of agriculture on the indices. Look at financial services. In Nifty, it's at about 38%. In NSE 500, it's about 32%. Whereas in GDP composition, it's about 6-7%, and so on and so forth. So clearly, over the last many, many years, there has been a disconnect between what happens in the GDP and what happens in the frontline indices. Second, if you look at market is always a forward-looking animal. It really looks backwards. So people were scratching their head somewhere this time around last year when the market started recovering, and people were looking at the data and say first quarter minus 20% plus kind of a contraction. Why is market started to go up? But market started looking at the next September, December, and March quarters, and we all were surprised to see how corporate India performed and positively surprised everybody on the earnings. So clearly, market is a forward-looking animal, and if you know uh, do a discounted cash flow for the market or the stocks which are part of the market for the next 10, 15 years, and then do a terminal value, even if you lose 1 year on a bad year, but the future is okay, you lose 5-7% of the present value on the discounted cash flow. And that was a time in March when markets were down 35, 40%, and stocks were down 50, 60%. So that's, I think, in a very simple language to decode why the linkage between economy and markets have been broken down. The second important part which you mentioned is that gain of market share. We saw that starting to happen somewhere in demonetization phase. And as we progressed over the last 2, 3 years, especially in COVID, the big is getting bigger, the strong is getting stronger. Let me give you some data to, kind of help you on that. If you look at the top six lenders of the country, in the last 3 years, their incremental market share in lending is about 70%. If you look at the top five cement companies of India, their incremental market share in the last 3 years is about 90%. You look at five steel companies in India, top five steel companies, their incremental market share is 90%. The top three telecom guys are virtually 100%. You look in the top 20 general insurance companies, they are gaining in market share. So clearly across sectors, we are seeing that the guys who have survived for long with stronger balance sheet, cash flows, these pandemics comes as a blessing in disguise, and they can increase market share from the unorganized, and that's what's happening in the country. Also across sectors like tiles, plywood, electrical cables and wire, grocery, luggage, shoes, we are seeing the similar trend where the organized large players, which are represented in the markets, are gaining market share at the expense of weaker players or the unorganized players. And I think that's the story which will continue for the next 5, 10 years, at least on the marketplace.
Right, Pankaj. I think you mentioned, two very important points. That one, investment is dealing about the future and we should train our minds accordingly. And second, about the big getting bigger. Now, the concern which comes is, in event of, smaller players being wiped out and India being a consumption-led economy, what kind of trickle-down effects would it have as far as consumption is concerned? Now, this time around, unlike last time where we were talking about revenge shopping, revenge buying, pent-up demand, etc., there are clearly two schools of thought. One who believes that the shock and scars of the, COVID virus this time is personal and people would take time to recover. Whereas there's another school of thought which believes the demand is going to get fiercer and stronger. In fact, if we look at the aviation numbers for the last 15 days in June, they have shown a strong revival. Now, what do you think? Which school of thought would you subscribe to? And do you think it is high time that we move from largely a consumption led economy to an investment led economy if we have to grow at a pace we really wish to grow at?
So few questions in one question. Okay, so let me ask you or answer one by one. Okay, your first part on whether we see a V-shaped revival this time around on the consumption side. Our thought is that the last 40 to 60 days has been emotionally draining for all of us this time. Unlike the first wave where bottom of the pyramid got impacted, in this wave, I think across the pyramid, right from bottom, middle, upper middle, and the higher super HNIs have got impacted, and we all have lost near and dear ones. So it's been emotionally draining for all of us. Listening to the commentaries of the companies, because many companies are reporting over the last 15 to 30 days, and our sense on the ground is that it won't be a V-shaped recovery in consumption this time around. It will be a more gradual recovery. And I think markets are using the template of wave one, where they saw V-shaped recovery. There was a huge release of pent-up demand. In our sense, this time it will not be the same. It will be more gradual because the scars are still fresh in the minds of all of us. So I think that's important to note. Whereas the different trend which we are seeing is that on the infrastructure side, things are continuing to happen at a quite normal pace. Unlike last time where we had a mass exodus of workers returning back to their villages, this time it has not happened so. So wherever we are speaking on the real estate construction side, work is slightly low but continuing at a good pace. So I think that's a good news. Coming to your second point on investment, uh, over the last 20 years, we have seen a gradual decline of manufacturing in the GDP, and GDP has been supported by consumption. But if you look at globally, any country, industrialization has to play a sustainable role for the continue to sustainably grow over a period of time, which has not happened in India. Various reasons we can, deep dive later. But what we are looking forward now, I think after a very, very long time, Mega, we are seeing early green shoots of capex revival, and we are minority in that thought process. But I think there are two, three reasons which we believe will help us this time on the private capex revival. One, look at the capacity utilization of the entire heavy capital intensive industries. Steel is operating at 85% utilization. Cement, almost our view is this year they will move to 70-75% utilization. Power plants, no power plant has been planned in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and power demand is going at 6, 7% still in pandemic. So at some point we will hit a demand supply roadblock, and we need to plan more power, maybe on renewables, maybe on thermal. Uh, Airports, metros continue to do good work. Road continues to do good work. And the second most important part is that corporate India has delevered very significantly. Uh, Let me give you one data point which will interest all your viewers. Uh, Over the last 5, 6 years, the private sector capex has stagnated at about 5 and a half lakh crores. In FY20, and I'm not giving a 21 number because all balance sheets, annual reports are not out. In FY20, the entire listed space uh, generated a profit of about 8 lakh or cash flows of about 8 lakh 85,000 crores. And you had a capex of 5.5 lakh crores. That means 3.5 lakh crores extra cash was generated, which was used to repay the debt. And I can tell you the health on the balance sheet side of corporate India is in a far, far better position today than it was, say, 2, 3 years back. And that's an important ingredient when a company plans for a capex, when it sees its balance sheet in a much, much leaner fashion. That's the second reason. The third and the most important reason is that there is a supply chain restructuring going on globally, and everybody has realized how importantly or whatever they were reliant on China for everything, and post this pandemic they are looking at different sources, and there I think PLI can come at a very, very handy thing. Government has announced 13 important sectors for PLI, and our sense is that in some of the sectors the movement has already started, like mobile manufacturing, like API pharma, and some of the other sectors are lined up, solar battery, auto ants. And there was a very interesting report by CSFB, which says that if we can execute it well, this PLI scheme, this can add 1.5% to our GDP by FY27. And this could incrementally add $150 billion in terms of aggregate revenue per year for corporate India. So I think these are some meaningful steps. And globally, there's a push towards infrastructure as well, which will help some of our export oriented companies. All in all, I think that after a long time, we feel that the cycle is right for the private sector capex to, pick up and probably sustain India's economic growth. Uh, and I am very, very hopeful that if we don't goof up this time and if we execute it well, I think environment is conducive for us to increase our manufacturing share in the GDP.
Right, Pankaj. I think you made a very important point about manufacturing sector showing signs of revival. So my next question to you is, do you anticipate sector rotation to happen? Because if you see the last two decades, it's clearly belonged to the BFSI sector. Last 5 years, we have seen auto and pharma losing their market share. So, do you anticipate new age companies or maybe metals, chemicals, etc., insurance companies, to be the dominant sectors going forward in the next decade or so?
So a very good observation. And just to put data in perspective, if you take a block of 5 years from 1997, Nifty on an average has seen 15 to 20 companies moving in, moving out. So has there been a good churn in Nifty and a very handful of companies and remain constant over a cycle. And why that has happened? Uh, you would, appreciate that the weightages which you are talking in the index is a combination of profit pool and the PE it deserves at that point of time, right? For example, oil and gas, when you started 2000, was at 19% of the weightage in the index. Today it's at about 12%. Why did it happen? Except the private sector leader, most of the other oil refineries, which are state owned, got derated on the multiple and the profit pool didn't expand. Similarly, look at automobiles. 4% weightage, which was there in 2000, after 21 years, the weightage is still at 5%. The only two sectors which has defied gravity and along with the profit pool expansion and multiple expansion has seen a significant increase in weightage is BFSI, 10% in 2000 to 37% now, and to a large extent IT. If you just remove the 2000 bubble, which was the dot-com bubble, and take in 2004, the IT wages was about 13%, if my memory serves me right. And today it's at about 16, 17% because the profit pool consistently, increased. So yes, many companies which are coming for listing now, the new age platform companies, if they can deliver the growth, and probably they will trade at high multiples because if they are high growth companies, they would find a higher weightage in the index. And the IT services bucket, which has been traditionally dominated by IT services company in India, which has slowed down their growth over the last 5, 6 years, could again get a boost because these high tech or platform companies coming and providing them. Similarly, in BFSI space, we saw insurance was completely absent 5, 6 years back. Then you saw large life insurance companies coming in, general insurance companies coming in, largely unpenetrated sector, profit pools expanding, and you saw how the BFSI weightage has become a quite a meaningful weightage, and one of the companies is part of the Nifty also now. So I think that's the overall construct, and I'm very excited that the next decade you will see a lot of new age businesses, which probably we would not have thought about being part of Nifty or top 100 index.
Right, Pankaj. So, Pankaj, moving on from sectors to human psychology, we have seen a lot of the rally which has happened over the last 3, 4 months, mainly guided by momentum, and this is clearly evident when we see the momentum indices like, the Nifty Alpha Index behaving. Now, there is a huge spike in retail participation, which is clearly evident when you look at the number of demat accounts that have probably have opened with Zerodha or ICICI Direct. Now, there was a very interesting statement from Morgan Stanley which said that, the average market participant has moved from, buying a stock to renting a stock, wherein the average holding period has decreased from 10 months to 5 months. Now, do you think that, a tendency like this, wherein the average holding period could further reduce, have a impact cost, impact on long-term investors, which could act as a deterrent in long-term returns? Or do you think, it is just another story which will probably be there for some time and, cease to exist?
This is a very interesting trend which is playing out. So, initially, sometime back, um, we used to ask our brokers, FI kya kar raha hai? What is the trend in the minds in the FI guys? FI guys used to ask, what is the trend for DI? DI kya kar raha hai? Now both of us asking retail kya kar raha hai? So I think clearly retail has become a very important animal. And not only in India, this trend is seen globally. And You have seen the Robinhood investors, right? How GameStop happened, how AMC, which was the recent one, that in 6 months almost, the stock is up 63x and you squeeze the short, right? In India also, you would be surprised to know, and I don't know how many of people know the data. Since April of 2005 till May 31st, 2021, sorry, April 2015 till May 2021, the FI flows have been matched by retail in terms of direct and indirect through MFs. Look at last quarter, which is March ending quarter. The FI flows were similar to retail flows in India, you know. And last year, when retail and FIs and domestic everybody was selling, retail was buying, you know. So we should not discard this thing. But I have a word of caution that normally retail goes by hearsay, rumors, just going by some social media posts and all that. And very few people do DIY. If you have the research bandwidth, if you have the capability of going through your in detail about the company, then it makes sense to do DIY. But if not, my only advice would be that you may get stuck in some of the lemons. And initially, it may look very exciting because you made money, but few wrong calls will wipe out all your, gains which you have made over last a year and a half. So be a little careful in the way you are approaching. But I think obviously the retail portion has become an important piece in today's market, and we can't ignore them because they are 50% of the cash volumes today. They are 54% of the derivative volumes in the market. So they are creating volumes at the expense of institutional shareholders. But I will come with a caution and a caveat that off late over the last 60 days, uh, we are a little cautious on the markets because we are seeing non-quality stocks move up. You rightly mentioned momentum has picked up significantly. We believe over a longer term, momentum doesn't pay off well if it's not invested in quality companies. And clearly, we are seeing greed on the street. The delivery volumes have shrunk very, very significantly. And recently, one of the IPOs were closed. It attracted more than 20 lakh applications, more than one of the retail company IPOs, which happened a few years back. So there are signs which are showing exuberance where one should be careful about. What we are positive is the profit cycle. So after maybe 2 decades, the Indian corporate profitability is moving up. So we bottomed out in FY20 at 1.6% of GDP. Now we are at 2.8% of the GDP, as the number suggests, for the entire listed space. So that's a good on the profit cycle. But in between such exuberance, such overvaluation calls for a drawdown as well. So be careful on those that you can protect your capital during drawdown, because you have to be on the pitch for a longer period of time. There's no point just trying to hit a six and you being out. To be in the game, you have to finish the game first. So I think that's something which is very important. So a caveat and a caution for retail investors that if you are doing it DIY, do it with proper research and know-how and knowledge.
Very well summarized, Pankaj, because there have been two recent examples which we have seen. One as early as last week, where a company which was contributing in a major way to the momentum has seen significant correction in last 4 5 trading days. And we have also seen one or two stocks which got delisted. They also had retail participation above 40%, which gives us a signal that maybe some amount of caution is being ignored by retail investors. And through your
Absolutely.
podcast, we would want to tell them that there's no point having 40 45% participation in a stock where mutual fund participation is less than 1% or even zero in some of these stocks.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where the experts like you come into picture, and it really helps enlighten retail investors.
Absolutely.
Uh, Pankaj, my next question is about something which is primarily your bread and butter and where you have expertise in, which is small and mid cap. Now, whenever our investors take exposure into small cap and mid cap, generally they understand that they are taking exposure in higher volatility, higher standard deviation, but that is going to be compensated with higher returns over a period of time. So if I take small cap as an example, if I take last decade, In last decade, we have seen small cap as an index and large cap as an index, not giving too much difference in terms of returns, while the volatility in small cap, as usual, has been very, very high. Now, there are two questions which comes to investors' mind. Does it make sense to keep taking extra risk and keep taking exposure in small cap? Or maybe last decade was not the right indicator, and in the times to come, we would see small cap outperforming large cap in a significant way if the holding period is more than 8, 9, 10 years.
Okay, Harsh, very good questions. Uh, Let me give you some data points. Uh, so what you mentioned about index is correct. If you look at BSE small cap index, uh, in a way, it has slightly outperformed Nifty if I take that as a large cap example over 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 years, and 10 year. But if you look at NSE small cap 100 index, that has clearly underperformed uh, the large cap index. And there comes the point that these are indices. If you look at the fund return, okay, uh, on an average, uh, the median, I'm not taking the mean, I'm taking the median because that's the right set context. Median fund of the small cap categories and the top 15, 16 fund category is generated 5 to 7% alpha post expense. That means that this category and mid cap category over the last many years has been able to generate higher return than the index, has been able to add alpha to the index. And you know, the debate which is going on in the market is that uh, can passives take over active fund management, right? Because in large caps, it's becoming difficult to outperform, say, the Nifty. But in the broader market space, if you look at mid and small cap, largely over a rolling return basis, funds have generated 5 to 6%, 7% alpha over the indices. And then when you equate that fund median return with the Nifty return or the large cap index return, you see that you have added 2 to 4% point extra return to your kitty over the last 10 years or so. And I think that's a decent amount of return. Your observation is right that in between you see a lot of volatility, and like nature, markets are cyclical also. You saw 16, 17 being the massive years for mid and small cap, 18, 19 being very bad, where large caps did well. 2021 is turning out to be great for broader markets. Who knows what holds for next 12 months? But I can pretty much assure you that over the next 3, 5 years, whatever we have discussed in terms of investment climate coming or becoming better, broad-based economy recovering, I think broader market will do extremely well. Don't forget, Harsh, that in 2005, we had only 94 companies which had a $1 billion market cap. As we speak today, there are 337 companies which are a $1 billion market cap. In the same context, China is about more than 2,500 companies above a $1 billion market cap. So as we move from a $3 to $5 trillion market and economy, you will see more and more a $1 billion market cap companies getting added and expanding the mid and small cap universe. And I am pretty hopeful that if you choose the right funds on the small cap and mid cap category based on their consistency, risk parameters, I think they can generate better returns over large caps from a longer term perspective. But what happens is normally people look at the rear view mirror and then come into the funds and then get disappointed. So my advice would be don't come in this category for a very short term period. At least 3 to 5 years should be your investment horizon. And I am pretty sure that if you have a longer term horizon, the volatility will nullify and provide you higher returns, which would be more accretive to your portfolio, is my sense.
Very strong observations, Pankaj, and I'll just take liberty of adding one or two points. So we're speaking to one of your counterparts, and he mentioned whenever passive guys trade on small cap, I feel really happy because whatever bad stocks could have come into my portfolio by error of judgment, I get a liquidity for those because otherwise active guys are not interested in buying those. So it provides me liquidity. And
Absolutely.
second observation is with respect to one of the presentations which you had a couple of months back, where you clearly articulated how Russell 2000 has outperformed S&P 500 and how
500
S&P 500 has outperformed Dow Jones
Dow Jones.
Industrial Index. So from that point of view, I think the broad basing is showing early signs, and we hope that it prevails, because that is how the distribution of wealth and the ability of all the companies to raise capital in the secondary or primary market increases manifold. So Pankaj, next question is about, again, taking a thread from your last answer, which is about when 2017-18 happened in terms of massive rally and mid and small cap. And then we saw a deep drawdown in 2018. Now, this is a question which investors always ask us, that generally in an equity market cycle, mid and small cap perform at the fag end, and then you have IPOs, and then you have some correction in the market if we go by historical trend. So should an investor be concerned about timing the market and booking the profit from small cap and mid cap? So somebody who would have booked profit in 2018 Jan or 17 December would have been much better off than somebody who would have not exited. Or one should be patient and just go by asset allocation and trim only that part of the portfolio which is going above asset allocation. So what would be your advice in terms of sell discipline in mid and small cap stocks or mutual funds?
So a very pertinent question. Uh, so I can tell you the framework where we operate in, and that will give you some kind of a clarity on the question which you asked. So what we look at as it all the four market capitalization, large cap, mid, small, and micro, is the earnings yield. To simplify it, earnings yield is nothing but inverse of P. So 1 by P is earnings yield. Okay. In 2017-18, if you go back into our commentary and our portfolios, almost somewhere around May, June, we went extra cautious on the entire space. And we said this is not sustainable. What we saw that the earnings yield of large cap, mid cap, small cap, all compressed. That means there was no spread to own extra risk. So you were better off owning any market capitalization. But obviously, mid and small cap, as you rightly said, come with its own volatility. Why would you own that when there is no spread between large cap, right? Then came 2018-19. Somewhere in 19 mid, we went full hog as a house, saying that now it's the time to start. We didn't know the timing. And the yields had widened very significantly between large caps and mid and small cap, but nobody wanted to own because liquidity was tight. There were other issues like IL&FS, Yes Bank, and so on and so forth. But we were sowing the seeds for a broader market rally. Come March 2020, it came as a reason or an excuse for large caps to correct, which were not correcting. And then you saw the broader market started to unfold. What is the status today? Obviously, since March 2020 spreads, we have compressed. So now the gap with earnings yield, the last one I saw, is about 1.5% between large caps and small caps, and 1.25% between large caps and mid caps. So there's still some juice left, but the spreads have compressed significantly over the last 15 months. And on a rolling return basis, this is calendar year to date is the highest year to date return or alpha of small cap index versus Nifty or mid cap index versus Nifty. So clearly these are showing signs that we may not be at the extremes, but we are moving towards that in the near term. And if earnings don't catch up to that and make the spreads again, expand, because if earnings surprises you, then your P reduces, right? And hence your earnings yield starts to look again better. So I think we have to watch on the earnings cycle, that how broad-based the earnings cycle is. But earnings yield spread will give you a very good indication where we are on that part of cycle. And that is showing us compression has happened, but we have still not moved to the extremes, which happened in 2017. But caution is warranted at the moment. We may be in a new profit cycle, which we believe, but look at 2003 to 8. In 2006, I clearly remember you had a sharp drawdown for no other reason, no reason. There was a margin selling, Nifty corrected by 30%, small cap index corrected by 45% in a matter of 8 weeks. I'm not at all calling for such drawdowns, but from there in next 30 weeks you again regained the old highs, and then from there you doubled again till 2008, right? Because the profit cycle was very powerful at that time. So we need to take on a call on that profit cycle, but be ready for sharp drawdowns intermediately, which can happen to which can happen in any part of the market. And yesterday and day before yesterday, we saw some glimpse of that, and people were scratching their heads and running around. कि क्या हो गया, क्या हो गया, क्या हो गया suddenly, you know. So have the stomach to digest this volatility, but these are good indicators for taking a call for moving out or booking some profits from this space. And as I said, everything is cyclical. A proper asset allocation will only sail you through. You know, if you try to be too safe and large capish, you would have probably missed the last 1.5 years, kicker. If you would have too mid cap and small cap oriented, 18, 19 would have burnt you out, right? So you need to have a proper asset allocation in mind with combination of large cap, multi cap funds or flexi cap funds and mid and small cap to give you that alpha and the kicker over the longer periods of time.
This question or this answer of yours has again given us a food of thought to ask two more questions pertaining to this. So one is about earning yields. And when we go back to our textbooks, earning yields used to be a good comparison to maybe a GSEC or a repo or an interest rate broadly in the economy to give us a sense on how fairly the market is priced. And that brings me to the question of asking you about what is the risk that you see in the market today? So one risk could be that you don't envisage at this point of time, which could be a complete unknown. But among the known unknowns at this point of time, we see certain areas of risk emerging. For example, inflation worldwide seems to be inching higher when US is showing an inflation of 4.5%, though we don't know whether it is a transient inflation or it is a sticky inflation. But other than that, also there are signals that countries are thinking of increasing rate of interest. I think there are 4 to 5 countries which have already increased rate of interest. We are not sure about third wave of COVID. There are doubts about the efficacy of the vaccine. So what is the real risk at this point of time that you see to the market?
So you pointed out most of the risk, and a couple of days back, Fed governor suddenly surprised the market with his hawkish statement. So I think interest rates moving up and inflation being sticky is a real risk. And just to put things in perspective, the risk is becoming real because US consumers are sitting on a saving pool of $2 trillion, which is roughly 9% of GDP. And Fed has expanded the balance sheet by more than $8 trillion, now crossing $8 trillion. So there has been a huge printing of money, which has happened in US by ECB and by Japanese central bank. And that has fueled whatever we are seeing today. The second thing is that the supply has not kept pace with demand. So you saw $1 trillion increase in consumption of goods over the last 12 months. So people spend on ACs, furniture, everything, right? Because they had some saving which was there. Whereas the supply on a lot of things have not kept pace over the last few years because nobody invested, because the aggregate demand was subdued. And that led to the mismatch and inflation moving up. So my sense is that we have to watch out inflation very closely, whether it is transient or whether it is sticky. Sticky inflation will only come when unemployment rate falls below a certain threshold and wages starts to increase, and there's a full employment kind of a situation in US. If unemployment continues to run in double digit, trust me, inflation will be more transitory in nature. Also, there are many things which are deflationary in nature. Like look at technology, how it is cutting costs across the board. Look at cost of lithium ion, look at cost of solar PV cells, all have gradually just corrected by 70-80% over last many years. So there has been deflationary forces also at work, which is counteracting it now. In the near term, we need to be careful about inflation, which is in turn related to interest rates. The third thing which I need to talk about is valuations. And I think the margin of safety is very, very important. Globally, I am seeing that reducing. The world market cap has now reached to 130% of GDP. In India, if you look on a normalized basis, you are somewhere at about 95, 100%, which is much higher than the mean averages. So can there be some correction because of any concern around? Answer is yes. So need to be a little careful looking at the where the markets are today in terms of margin of safety. So these are some of the things we need to keep in mind and make sure that we have enough powder that whenever markets correct, we can take that as an opportunity. Uh, Normally what happens, we all get carried away so much by the euphoria that we invest everything and we have very little cash left whenever market offers us the opportunity. So I think these are some of the risks which you rightly pointed out. And finally, if earnings momentum doesn't keep pace. So last 3, 4 quarters globally, we have seen earnings surprises, right? Corporates doing exceedingly well on cost side, demand recovering, surprising the street on profitability. I think over the next 2, 3 quarters, we will hit a roadblock somewhere on that delta change, you know, and markets like delta change. Market doesn't like status quo, you know. So if there's status quo and earnings are in line, there's no fun. And I think that will be another challenge whether earnings can keep up pace or surprise us positively, not only in India, globally, compared to where the street expectation is. So I think these would be some of the things to watch out in the near term.
Uh, Very well taken, Pankaj. And now my next question is about asset allocation because you very strongly supported that as a concept. And I have to ask you this question because your funds, both on small cap and mid cap, have outperformed, large cap as well as relative to benchmark. They have done extremely well. So when investors DIY or even investors who have advisors, when they look at the past return, they get tempted to increase their allocation in mid cap and small cap. And there's a question we often face because people or investors who are growth investors, they always ask us what should be the ratio of mid cap, small cap, and large cap. So one view could be that I go by BSE 500, whatever is the allocation there, I just allocate that. But if I do that, I end up invariably having a very low allocation in small cap and a moderate allocation in mid cap. Do you think that's the right framework, or one should be slightly skewed higher toward mid cap and small cap in an emerging economy like India?
So there's no right or wrong answer, Harsh. You know, I always feel the biggest enemy to anybody's wealth creation is the person himself. You know, the reason is that you should know yourself first rather than trying to get carried away what the neighbors are doing. You know, and in India, especially, we tend to get carried away by what socially is happening around us, and then we try to build our temperament around that, but our natural temperament may not be that, you know. And I have seen investors which swear by, I am there for 5 years, 10 years, and you give a 20-25% drawdown, they shake up and they redeem, you know. So I think knowing your client's temperament, the risk appetite is most important for advising a proper and a suitable asset allocation. Many a times I have seen people saying कि मेरे को इक्विटी करना है, मेरे को इक्विटी का फंड बता दो सर, 25% नीचे जा सकता है। अच्छा, मेरा 100 रुपया 75 हो जाएगा। हाँ, नहीं नहीं यार, ये तो अपने को नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी तो ऊपर ही जाता है ना। हाँ, लॉन्गर टर्म जाता है, लेकिन इन बिटवीन आपको झटका मिलेगा। So he knows he is not an equity investor, and you also know he is not an equity investor. So don't give him equity at all. Give him only fixed income products. And on the contrary, I have seen a 75, 80-year-old people uh, outpacing people, younger people on risk. They say, मैंने जो करना था मैंने कर लिया पूरे टाइम, अब ये जो पैसा है मेरे नेक्स्ट जनरेशन के लिए। तो आप कुछ ऐसा बताओ कि नेक्स्ट जनरेशन को 15-20% का कंपाउंडिंग हो जाए। आई एम विलिंग टू टेक दैट रिस्क, आई एम विलिंग टू नॉट लुक सीरियसली फॉर नेक्स्ट 5 to 10 years. From a 75-year-old, if you hear this, you're surprised, and you know he understands the risk, right? So for him, the asset allocation will be very different. So the point I am trying to tell you, Harsh, is that there's no right or wrong answer for this asset allocation. We have to identify individuals' temperament and risk appetite and the stomach to digest volatility, and accordingly advise them the right asset allocation. Knowing your client and knowing yourself is very important for that purpose. Uh, Most of the time, I feel that we are enemy to ourselves in the wealth creation path. We feel something, but we are not that. So one needs to first figure out what you are and then embark on that wealth creation journey.
It's very true because we have seen a lot of investors who say, I don't mind taking 20-30% drawdown. But even when there is a 5% drawdown, the
They will
blood
call you.
pressure starts. Yeah. So we always tell them that if there is a health risk to you because of volatility, then fixed income is the only place for you. But if you think it is not a health risk and you have the willingness and ability to take higher risk, then I think we should go for slightly higher allocation towards equity.
Absolutely.
So, Pankaj, I'll not let you go without asking my last question, and that is very relevant in today's times. So, we have seen a lot of action in the primary market, though there was a lull for a couple of months, but now we are seeing the revival of interest again. And in this cycle, we are seeing a lot of new age companies coming to the market and raising money, be it companies like Paytm, Zomato, Delivery, Nykaa, and all these guys are commanding good amount of valuation. Now, the question which we always ask ourselves and we ask fund managers is that generally we are brought up in a very, very different way. When I speak to you, you would always give a very high preference to free cash flow, for example. You will give very high preference to continuity of profit. But when you look at these companies, these are scalable companies, these have eyeballs, but at the end of the day, their growth rate in terms of top line are very, very different from growth rate in terms of bottom line. Rather, they talk about reducing the losses and not increasing the profit. And free cash flow is something which they have hardly seen. So, do we feel or do we anticipate fund managers like you taking exposure into these companies over a period of time? Because it's a very early question to ask, but how are the models in your mind with respect to these companies who are hitting the market in next 6 months to 1 year?
So a very good question, Harsh. And one of our core themes, which we are positive on, is digitalization. Okay. And we think that COVID has accelerated that process. Not only looking at IT services as one bucket, but we are evaluating every investee company of ours in our portfolio, that how well prepared they are on their digital strategy, right? So it's not that competition is only now what the competition we are seeing. We saw in the broking industry, from nowhere, this guy came in and destroyed the profit pool of most of the bank sponsored brokerage companies or individual brokerage companies. So there's a risk is meaningful, right? And my sense is that over the next 5-10 years, the new age tech platform companies will probably form a significant portion of our market cap. Uh, in the next 5 years, probably maybe 150 to 200 billion dollars worth of IPO we can see from the new age companies which will happen. I can't comment on any company, but we should be nimble and agile as public fund managers to evaluate each and every company. In many of the companies, what we are seeing is that the sectoral leadership has been established. So there are either two or three guys, and they will remain for next 5-10 years because entry barriers have now been created. What is not clear is the unit economics at the moment. And my belief is that at some point of time, there will be an inflection where they will break even and every incremental sales will just flow to the bottom line and the profit pools will expand. We have to visualize that whenever these companies come, whether they over the next 3-5 years, when will be the inflection point starting to come? And if global companies are any example, we have seen that how market over a period of time lashed on these companies because they could grow at 20, 25, 30% even on a large base. And I'm pretty sure that habits of Indians are changing. E-commerce is still a small portion, but post-COVID, everybody is feeling comfortable. And the most potent combination in India, which nobody talks about, is 1 into 1 into 1, Harsh. 100 crore bank accounts with 100 crore Aadhaar and 100 crore mobile connection. Think about this potent combination as a major weapon that any large company wants to do it. Look at the largest telecom company in India. One guy took 10 crore subscriber in many years. They did it in few months just based on Aadhaar card. You know, so the kind of scale up which you can do across geographies, across pan India, can be mind blowing. Look at, for example, EdTech company, right? Today in US or anywhere you go, you pay $100 an hour if your son or daughter wants to get a private tuition. Okay, here is a edtech company like what we did in IT, for example, in last 20 years. We will give you that for $20, and best teachers, right? On mathematics, on science, on physics, we have the best capital brain. Can that be a global model? Answer is yes, it can be. So my sense is there will be many business models which will break the boundaries of India and go global as well. So we have to evaluate each and every company very, very closely. Need to have an open and clear mind, be agile and nimble. We cannot be getting carried away only by our thought of free cash flow and return on equity, because there will be in many companies, I talk this as an inflection point, where the profit pool will just expand in a very short period of time. So we need to be aware of that. So I think digitalization could be a very big theme, not only on the existing companies, but the new age tech companies as well.
And that's a very positive statement, Pankaj, to end with, that one into one. And it seems to be extremely powerful because we have seen a lot of companies, like you mentioned, in brokerage and all, where, earlier the demat account used to be opened through a signature set of 15, 20 signatures. And now these guys are doing it online. And that is just one innovation that these guys have done. So
look at UPI, crazy
right.
transaction. Look at Bheem, crazy, right? And vaccination, right? Uh, if 2 years, 3 years back, Harsh, I would have been this interview, and I was telling you that we can vaccinate 20, 22 crore people in a matter of 90 days, you would have laughed on me, Pan India.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, we have done that. And we are probably now vaccinating 40, 50, 60 lakh people a day now. We will be probably. So my sense is it could only be possible because of that one Aadhaar card, that which 100 crore people are having today. So the kind of potent weapon we have, one into one into one, don't underestimate that. And I think many new age companies would cut down the cost of acquisition, will break the barriers and boundaries geographically, and scale up very fast. And we would be surprised. We would be surprised.
That's very
So,
interesting. Even on vaccination, what we have seen, our friends in US, when they go for vaccination, they just get a plain paper. On
slip,
that, they get
absolutely,
this thing.
slip.
So in a lot of states, that's the criteria. And here we
Yes,
get an SMS with our certificate, which is not a
absolutely.
small feature.
Solve the feature. So I think Indian stack has done extremely well. The Indian IT stack has been very powerful. We as Indians may not appreciate it, recognize it, but my reason of optimism over the next decade is based on these foundations. And any company which can, use these strong foundations for their growth will be the winners going forward.
That's really heartening to hear. And with this, we come to the end of our discussion, and it's been really enriching discussion and a few key takeaways for us. In terms of understanding of market, like the way you explained how top companies, be it in cement, be it in steel, be it in lending space, banks, they have done extremely well in terms of incremental business. How you articulated very well how industrialization has to play an extremely good role in sustainable growth of the economy, and how you are seeing your green shoots of private capex coming into picture. Health of balance sheets of Indian companies looking extremely good, and how you mentioned about in last 6 years FII flows versus retail flows, and that is very obvious in SIP numbers, because when I joined this industry, I never thought we would have a $1 billion plus rupees dollars coming into SIP on a monthly basis. That was a huge number to ask for at that point of time. And corporate profit as a percentage of GDP showing significant revival is again something which gives us a lot of confidence. One of the last things and one of the most important things which you mentioned, and it is not important only from a portfolio point of view, but from a behavioral point of view, which we will take away as the single most potent sentence from this entire conversation, is that biggest enemy to wealth creation for any individual is the individual himself or herself.
Absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
think if we learn that, we have driven home the point for this entire conversation in a single sentence. Pankaj, thank you so much for taking out time on a
My
holiday,
pleasure.
and despite having such a pressing schedule, taking out time, attending to all the questions in a very, very lucid and explaining them in detail. We are extremely, the gratitude is extreme from our end. And thank you so much. And I'm sure our investors will learn a lot from this podcast. And we, in fact, have learned a lot from this. Thank you so much.